I moved from Georgia about 6 years ago to take on a new position here and help build out the data center. And one of the things that struck me when I arrived and started interacting with the community and working with the community was that Oklahoma has this foundation where business owners and leaders across the state get together to talk about ethics and have a focus on ethics and make sure that companies and businesses are run in an ethical manner. And I was really struck by that, and we had to get involved, right? Because Google is kind of aligned in that direction, where an ethical company, we do the right thing. Our motto is "Don't be evil" and all that kind of stuff. So I'm really excited to, after seeing several presentations here, to actually be speaking and sharing some things with all of you. So I'm going to talk about primarily how our economy and culture is changing.
As part of the sound, we're going to have you stand behind the podium.
Oh, podium? Okay. All right. Can everybody hear? All right, perfect. Do I need to go through all that again, or are we good? Okay. Okay, so I'm primarily going to talk about how our culture and how our economy is changing, and how that impacts what we do as businesses to operate in an ethical manner. I'm going to talk about how that impacts the workforce and how businesses, technology, and workers and customers interact together in an ethical way. I'm going to talk about the importance of diversity. And as I look at the crowd, I can't help but notice that we have a wealth of diversity here, which is great. Imagine a group like this meeting 50 years ago or 60 years ago would not have this wealth of diversity, so it's really exciting. So, then I'm going to talk about some corporate social responsibility. What are some things you can do as a business to act in an ethical manner and have a central focus on it? And then I'm going to talk about navigating some change, and I'm going to talk about some current events, and I might touch on some topics that are a little touchy, but I'm going to focus on them as from the angle of how does technology magnify or impact these events. So keep an open mind, and we'll go through it together. Okay, so I've started a counter for stuff on the internet. You can't see it, it's in another tab, but we'll revisit it at the end. But what it does is counts up things that are happening on the internet right now. Right, so as we're talking over the hour or 50 minutes or whatever, that counter is going to be counting, and we'll see how many things it counts at the end of the presentation. It's incredible, the volume and magnitude of things that are going on the internet. And this is kind of what the growth of the internet looks like. Has everybody heard the doubling pennies problem? You take one penny and you double it, and then double, double, double. And if you would rather accept that or just $100,000 every day or whatever. Human knowledge and data on the internet, a lot of things when we talk about technology are exponential. So there's a doubling function in data and knowledge, science, and all that kind of stuff. So we're seeing that the rate of human knowledge is doubling something like every 18 to 24 months. The amount of collective knowledge that humans as a race possess doubles every 18 to 24 months, and that's accelerating. Right, 100 years ago, it wasn't that fast. And what's happening is the same thing as the pennies. We're standing on the shoulders of everyone who's kind of developed things and gone before us, and we're pushing that envelope and gaining more knowledge based on what other people have done before us. So this is kind of what it looks like, and the slide's a little small, but it goes through the kind of 6 phases, and there are lots of different ways to look at it, but I thought this was an interesting take on it. The first section is sort of like the agricultural, ironworking period of human history, and then it goes through all the different periods and talks about the things that happened. And this is saying that we're kind of in the sixth wave, which is like technology, robotics, automation, AI, huge advances in medical science and all that kind of stuff. So we're kind of in that sixth wave, if you will. So we're talking about data on the internet, and I like to use this analogy as to just give you kind of a mental picture of how vast what we're talking about is. So if, let's say that you were a YouTube watcher, that was your profession, right? And you were a professional YouTube watcher, and all you did all day was watch YouTube. Every minute that you watched YouTube, you would fall behind by 300 hours, or 200 hours, 299 hours and 59 minutes. You would fall behind because you can't keep up. There's no way that you can watch enough YouTube. If you spend all your time watching YouTube, you'd fall behind. You can't keep up with it because there's so much being uploaded. There's so much data being added to our collective conscience and the cloud. So what YouTube, one of the benefits it brings is, anybody see The Matrix? Right? So this is Keanu Reeves, right? And in The Matrix, he was plugged up to the machine, and they plug him in, and they hit a button, and he knows Kung Fu, right? YouTube is essentially that function for us, and it's available for everyone. If you want to learn about farming, you go to YouTube and watch a video on it, and suddenly you're an expert. My wife wouldn't agree with everything that I end up being an expert at by watching YouTube, but fixing the lawnmower. But yeah, so YouTube allows you to, it's kind of a fast track for knowledge, right? Anything you want to know, and it's not just YouTube, it's other things on the internet as well. Wikipedia, for example. These sources of knowledge are available all the time to anyone in the world, instant communication all over the place. It's an amazing time to be alive, and that's sort of why the human knowledge is doubling at ever faster rates. So here's some stats. Every minute, so 47,000 Android apps are downloaded, 200 million emails, 4 million Google searches, and 2.5 million Facebook shares. And all those numbers are growing kind of exponentially, and a lot of this is happening as the third world and developing economies are connected up to this cloud, right? So their voices are kind of, and their knowledge and their ideas are kind of added to this collective conscience, right? And they bring their perspective. Oh, this is really cool. Science is doing some amazing stuff. I can't read the words on the slide, but so the TWIS.org puts out every week This Week in Science posting about what science says advancements have come out. And I think on this one they have stem cells. They're on the verge of being able to cure blindness by using stem cells to regrow eye tissue. They're able to 3D print organs. Google came out with, Google actually has a section of the company that focuses on medical stuff. And one of the things Google's working on is kind of these assistive devices that help with medicine. And one of the things they're working on is a contact lens that measures blood glucose level. So instead of pricking your finger, you can just wear a contact lens, and it measures your glucose, and it's wireless, connected up the internet. You can get the data on your phone, right? You can measure blood glucose in real time, constantly. You can track your blood sugar over time and see how different things impact. You can tie it into dieting apps and calorie trackers and all kinds of stuff, right? So this is the kind of stuff that we're on the verge of, these things that you don't think about having to do, pricking your finger to test blood glucose. There are better ways to do it, and we're starting to discover these things. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on in space exploration. The mission to Pluto, we got all this tons of pictures. We're discovering water on Mars, possibly life elsewhere in the universe. We're finding exoplanets all over the place that could possibly sustain life, right? Physics, all of this stuff. And I like this so much that, yeah, I put another slide in. Yeah, this is just really cool. twis.org. We talked a little bit about some of the devices. Nest does environmental stuff, some efficiency, home efficiency. And part of what the internet enables us to do is have all these assistive devices connected up to the cloud around the home, your refrigerator, all that stuff that can help to make things more efficient, to make our lives better. This slide talks about the number of connected devices in the world. And at some point in 2007 or so, we passed the point where there were more devices in the world than people, which is pretty cool. And it's kept, the trend has kept going. Productivity in cloud. I like to describe, I have an IT background, so I think in servers and stuff like that. So if you have your server in your closet hosting your own email, Gmail is something like 80 times more efficient from an environmental perspective in terms of CO2 and all that kind of stuff. So what happens is you get economies of scale from grouping these services together in one location. That's why we have these huge data centers all over the place and why we came to Prior. Instead of having the server in your closet, 10 or 15 or 20 people on one server, we have millions of people on hundreds of servers. We get that economies of scale, and it's better for the environment, it's better for people. And then you get all kinds of benefits, like being able to collaborate on things and get your email from everywhere. I have my presentation on the phone that I could study before coming up to speak or whatever. Instant connectivity everywhere in the world, connected to the cloud, and it's more efficient, it's better, economies of scale and all that kind of stuff. And Google's not the only one doing some amazing things in this space. Amazon's doing stuff. Facebook has a really, really good model for centralizing a bunch of things. So. And when you start having that data and everything kind of centralized, we have Google search and all that kind of stuff, the statistics that come from it. You have things that you can start doing that feed back into some of these other science disciplines and politics and all kinds of stuff. One of the things is flu activity. So when you get sick, a lot of people go onto Google and they type in their symptoms and try to figure out what's going on and what to do to fix it before they go to the doctor. So you can look at that and all those queries, and you can track diseases as they move across the world, and it mirrors and actually in some ways is better than a lot of the stuff that the CDC is doing to track diseases. So you're looking at symptoms, you have lots of data, you're able to do things like the flu trends. And then Google Maps, the location of stuff, we're able to track traffic patterns, delays, reroute people around stuff. So there's a couple of instances of how we can use all that data for benefit of society. Broadband access and penetration is really something that's really important. There's a lot of movement, Northeast Oklahoma especially, to bring more access and more internet access to people and make it faster and better. We've seen in places like Kansas City, we have G-Fiber. There's kind of an economic renaissance that happens when you give people really high-speed internet access. Their businesses become better, you have a lot of entrepreneurship, a lot of small business activity and stuff like that happens when you have fast internet access. And I could see, in the future, there's a potential that it could become, more like a utility, like your water service, and guaranteed speeds and much better service and all kinds of stuff. All right, so there's a lot of interesting things happening in this space. So all these things are impacting our quality of life. In 10 years, I don't want to drive anymore. I hate driving. Google, a lot of different car companies. I think Ford is working on self-driving car. lots of different companies in this space. There's a lot of kind of innovation happening, and they're getting good at it. Google has driven like 500,000 miles with no accidents caused by the car. It's getting really good. And there are thousands of people across the country that die every year in car accidents. Everyone in this room probably knows someone either directly or indirectly has been involved in one. This is something that's really impactful for the world. And 3D printing is a really interesting thing. 10 years from now, I want to be able to order something from like Amazon or somewhere online and download the blueprints to my 3D printer and then print it out. Or have these 3D printers at distribution centers. So you simplify logistics. You don't have to ship things around on boats and everything. You can do manufacturing closer to the customers and maybe even within the home of a customer, right? And then Google Maps, of course, robotics. So how does all this stuff, all these changes and things that are going on, how do they impact the workforce? So let's talk about a couple of these things. Glassdoor, does everybody know what Glassdoor is? Yeah, so Glassdoor is a website where people can basically give feedback about employers. So if your employees have a good experience, they like working for the company and all that kind of stuff, they leave positive feedback. And this is a trend we're seeing in the consumer space. You know, customers are leaving feedback for businesses and services and everything. And Glassdoor allows people to do that for businesses as well for employment. So this is kind of driving better working conditions, because if you're known on Glassdoor as a poor employer who doesn't pay good salary and doesn't have good benefits and treats their employees like dirt, then people aren't going to want to work for your company. So this is, and we'll talk about later in the presentation with other things as well, but all this technology that's happening, this instant communication, especially YouTube and the video stuff, is enabling people to communicate about the way they feel about products, about politics, about businesses and everything. So we have, if someone or a business does something that's unethical, or a politician does something that's unethical, or a business sells a product that's defective or whatever, that instantly has an impact. And it's magnified due to the communication that happens on the internet, social media, and all that kind of stuff. So robotics and automation, I've put a robot on here, but there's a lot of stuff happening in software that's helping improve people's lives at work, making things easier, doing rote tasks automatically. And you hear some restaurants looking into robotics to for workers, to make fast food and all that kind of stuff. Some of these lower wage jobs, this rote labor jobs, there's a potential that these could be replaced by robotics and automation within the next 50 years or so. Now, what I think is going to happen, I'm not that much of a pessimist about it. I think people are going to have to repair the robots. So I think there's going to be a lot more, even though those jobs might go away, there are going to be a lot of other jobs that happen around that. And all this technology is impacting the way we educate students, the way people learn, and the way people go through their careers. People are jumping careers faster now. There's a lot of people say that the careers that people have now won't exist in 50 or 100 years. They'll be completely different. So the one thing that we can get from this presentation is change is happening and it's accelerating. And as business people, as career people managing our own careers, we need to be ready to embrace that change and ready to retool. Learning is going to be lifelong in the future. It isn't something that you can just go to school for and then you're done. You're going to have to continue learning. And so, Mad Men, this is another way the workforce is changing. I don't know who watches Mad Men. I don't watch it too much. I've seen a couple episodes, but Mad Men is basically what work was like, 50 years ago, 60 years ago. Very patriarchal, very top-down. That model of work is changing. What we expect managers to do and their relationships with their employees is changing. Authoritarians are not going to do well in this kind of new world, right? Businesses expect employees to innovate and come up with ideas on their own. They need to be able to develop ideas and have a safe space or area where they can express ideas. So managers are going to have to adjust their style of management. And then diversity. We talked about diversity in here, which is great. That's happening everywhere. Globalization is driving a lot of this stuff. The customers that businesses have are becoming global, right? We're reaching a global market, and our employees need to be representative of that market. Because how are we going to innovate, develop products that people are going to want if we have different cultural perspectives? And this is something that's going to become even more important for businesses as we continue to reach out and embrace global markets. So workforce diversity, huge benefits. And I describe it like, I use the analogy of concrete. Concrete is strong because it's heterogeneous, right? You have different elements mixed in. You have the rebar, you have rock, gravel, you have the cement that kind of mixes everything together. Teams are the same way. They're strong when they're diverse. You have diverse perspectives. You have different views, different groups of people. Research has shown that those teams tend to be highly functional, to be successful. So it's important for companies as they're reaching these global markets for their employees to be diverse. It makes the team stronger. And at Google, I've helped build several teams. I think we have an interview counter, and I've done 800 plus interviews since I started at Google 10 years ago. I've met and talked to and interviewed a huge number of people for various teams and built several teams that were highly functional, that were diverse. The team we have at the data center in Pryor is almost 50% women in the IT industry. And the team is hugely successful, even when compared to other teams within Google data centers. And the reason why is because of that diversity. So let's talk a little bit about what customers are looking for. We talked about globalization. People are buying your products from all over the world now, from different cultures, different countries and everything. Because of that access and reach and globalization, there's been kind of a decrease in brand loyalty, at least within established markets, right? Well, let's take Facebook, for example, is really big right now, but it's only been big for a few years. Before that, it was MySpace and all these other different products. So, and Google as well, right? If we don't innovate, if we don't keep up and develop a really good product that people want to use, they will jump to something else. And we've seen that Yahoo used to be huge, and now they're kind of on the ropes, right? The companies have to continuously evolve in order to produce a product that people want to buy, because there's so much access and the cost of switching is lower for a lot of different industries, and especially in IT. So we talked a little bit about social media with Glassdoor. I can't stress enough the importance of interacting with customers. Once you make a sale, that's not it. You're looking for the customer to do reviews, to repeat buy, to refer friends, and all that kind of stuff. The traditional sales techniques in marketing and networking are being enhanced with social media. There's even larger reach. And the customers are also looking for added value. So we talked about some of the diversity things, the innovation in products that people are looking for, but they're also looking for, and we'll talk about this in depth in a little bit, they're looking for corporate social responsibility. They're looking for ethical companies. They're looking for companies that are going to do the right thing. And there was a touch on GMOs for a minute. There was a study that recently came out that GMOs are fine. They aren't harmful or whatever. But there's kind of one of the value adds that companies have been taking advantage of is if they're GMO free, they can charge more money and reach more customers, and people want that. There's a demand, right? That's the value add. So they're perceived as ethical. They're perceived as having a better product because they have that added value of being GMO free. And now we understand that GMOs are probably fine at research or whatever, but that's one of the things, an example of kind of what I'm talking about. For Google, environmental responsibility, security of data is something that's really important that we have to get right, and we have to add that value, or companies are going to go back to Yahoo. So, yeah, don't be evil is Google's motto, right? And it's not just a motto; it's something that we fully embrace, throughout the whole company. All right. So I thought I'd touch on a couple of corporate scandals. Those are always fun to talk about in ethics lunch, right? So Enron is kind of a prime example of a company that did the wrong thing, unethical stuff. They cooked the books for a long time, and a whistleblower kind of got the word out, and it didn't take them very long at all to kind of crash and burn. You see other companies acting unethically, and it doesn't take long at all for them to fail completely. And after Enron, we ended up with something like this. And I put those socks in there to make sure everybody's awake. We all have to be compliant with our socks. Socks compliance is very important. So I mean. I like puns. I'm sorry. So, SOX compliance. SOX is one of the things that kind of came out of that scandal. Let's define a framework for people to be ethical in markets and in business, and this is what SOX became. And it's a little scary when people talk about dismantling some of these controls that we put in place that help level the playing field for between investors and businesses and customers. We need some of these controls. And when you look at politics or anything else, there's typically view on this side, and they kind of pull the discussion one way or the other. But really where we need to be is somewhere in the middle. And SOX is one of those things where we need responsible corporate controls. On one side, they're burdensome bureaucracy, and on the other side, businesses can go wild and do whatever they want. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. All right, is everybody awake? And then we had something recent where several businesses and governments kind of enabled them to do this, but they were selling junk and ended up crashing the financial markets due to bad stuff around housing and loans and all that kind of stuff. So this is percent change in GDP around the Great Recession and the financial crisis. This is the impact that something like this can have on the global economy, right? So a bad decision by a few managers or a few businesses can have a really huge impact. Now, here's another, making sure everybody's awake. All right, Wu-Tang. Has everybody heard of Martin Shkreli? He's the one who bought the rights to a drug that was life-saving and then jacked the price up like 12,000%, whatever it was. We talked about some other things where corporate scandals and businesses do things that are unethical. It backfires pretty quick because there's instant communication, there's social media, things things go viral and all that kind of stuff. This is one example where somebody did something that, while probably legal, was of ethical, dubiousness, and he got called out on it pretty quickly. So I'll talk a little bit about Google's philosophy around some of this stuff, because we talked about the brand loyalty and how quickly people can shift. Google's really focused on doing the right thing, for the customers, for our advertisers. Google makes money, and we've $500 billion now by doing the right thing. Doing the right thing pays for businesses. We treat everyone with respect. Anyone in the company can raise an issue or escalate something. I tell a story at Google about when I worked in Atlanta at the data center. We had Larry Page, who was the founder of the company, come out for a visit, and everybody was outside and kind of hanging out in a break area. And here comes Larry Page walking out the front door with some of the local managers kind of trailing behind. Right, the bigwig from California is there, and Larry, stopped by, shook everybody's hand, said hi to everyone, and then he went to the side of the building and started climbing up the ladder. This is a data center, right, and very tall data center. There's a ladder on the side. He wanted to see the view of the countryside from on top of the roof, and everybody's like, "There's $18 billion climbing up the ladder." But the point is. We're watching for his insurance agent to have the trampoline to catch him, right, if he fell off the roof. But the point there is the founders of Google are very down to earth. They're very personable. They're still grounded. They still really care about people within the company and without. They care about doing the right thing, and they really do want to change the world and make people's lives better. One of the things we're very focused on at the data centers is protecting the environment. So we have a really robust environmental protection and safety program. We want to make sure nothing gets in the water. Everything is perfect, and we don't have any mistakes or accidents. It's something that everyone on site of the data center has a train on. We drill. We have disaster tests and all kinds of stuff to make sure we're ready in the event that something happens. So making sure employees are safe is really important to us. Following the laws, and then going beyond just the minimum. All right, if we have an EPA limit for emissions, we want to stay well under that. And I just included a couple of pictures of the data center in Oklahoma. We just announced that this is our 4-story building at the bottom left. And it's an interesting story. Someone wanted to come take pictures of the campus, and he got in a helicopter and drove around and took all these pictures and wrote an article about how we look like a prison and bunch of gray buildings, boring, the bleakness of our basketball court and all that kind of stuff. So we thought, for the benefit of our employees and the benefit of people in the community looking at our data center, we need to make it look a little better. So we put a mural on one of the buildings, and we're working on landscaping and doing a bunch of stuff because we realized that it really was pretty ugly and bleak. So we need to make it look a little better. And that's part of making sure your employees are happy, making sure that their surroundings are safe and look attractive and all that kind of stuff. And this is a view from inside. That's what our machines look like and all that kind of stuff. I want to talk a little bit about what Google's done in the community. We have kind of a company focus on don't be evil and company goals, but we also have a local focus because we live next to people in the community, they're neighbors. We want to make sure that we focus on improving their lives, and it's kind of self-serving because if we do things like workforce development and training and education and STEM initiatives, that means we get better employees in the area, and it's better for everybody. So there was a a long article that came out recently about prior schools where the data center is being off of state funding for education, which in the current economic situation in the state is huge, right? With the $1.3 billion budget shortfall and all that kind of stuff. Other schools are being cut to 4 days a week instead of 5. Prior's in a situation where they didn't have to do that, largely because Google has a presence there. And we've been able to, our tax dollars have been able to provide a better education for people in the area, which is huge. It's a really bad situation, but it's not quite as bad because we're there, which is something I'm happy about it. I wish the whole state, weren't in this situation, but if we can make things better for prior schools, right? We talked about environment and energy. We also hold a lot of data in the data centers, and we don't allow people to take tours. That's why I brought a couple of pictures. You have to be satisfied with that. We have a pretty robust security force. We have fencing, biometric stuff, cameras, badges, different levels of security to make sure that people don't access stuff they're not supposed to access. Data security is something that's very important to us. We erase and crush, destroy hard drives and media that could potentially have user data on them. We're really, really careful because all it takes is one leak or one instance and people are going to go back to Yahoo for their searches. All right, navigating change. So based on all this stuff, what can people do to help navigate and help keep up with the changes that are going on in the world? One is to paint murals on the side of your buildings, do landscaping and stuff like that. Make sure you create a good environment for your employees. Make sure they're happy. I have a philosophy on teams that I manage that I want people to be able to take care of their lives outside of work and give them the time that they need, and then they come back without having to worry about losing their job because their kid was sick or whatever. And Google is very supportive of that. Making sure people can take care of their personal lives while they're at work, so they're happier. Fostering diversity, that helps not only develop products, it helps with innovation, it builds stronger teams. We talked about the concrete, but it also helps you reach customers and engage with your customers in a better way. It helps you understand your customer base if your employee base looks, and is representative of your customers. Provide added value by being responsible, by being ethical, by doing things the right way, and focusing on that. Engaging customers on social media, using social media to promote your business, and customer engagement on social media is critically important for businesses in this environment. And then corporate social responsibility. If you're attending this meeting, it means you're already focused on it, but interacting with the community, doing philanthropy type stuff, and being supportive of diversity in companies. And one last note, this is another kind of current events thing, the whole HB2 North Carolina. Google has kind of an official policy that we celebrate diversity and we don't want to discriminate and all that kind of stuff. But this is personal views. Google has their take, but this helps to illustrate how powerful businesses are when it comes to the social change, right? Because what happens is the businesses, boycotted, certain areas of the country. They're saying, we don't like what you're doing. We're standing up for equal rights and all that kind of stuff. There's power there. Businesses have economic power to help drive social change, and it's important that businesses realize that responsibility. They have the power to do it. It's important to take that power and act responsibly with that power that they have. All right, so I like to leave a lot of time for questions, and we'll take a look at the counters, which will be pretty interesting. How are we doing on time? Okay. All right. So 39 million tweets.
Might get it plugged in. Back.
Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have 39 million tweets.
Get upside down. That's what's going on. It's gotta be this way, sorry. Do it this way. That mic was upside down.
Okay.
That's
Can everybody hear me now? Okay, perfect. So I think it's about 5 million Instagram photos. Everything, so any questions? Yes.
How long does it take for you guys to upload the data that you get when you're driving the Google cars around to Google Maps?
Yeah, so we have, it's a fleet of people who drive the cars all over the world, right? And they record the data. I think they have, I'm not fully familiar with the process, kind of. They record the data locally on hard disks. Those disks are shipped, and I think they're ingested at one of our data centers. But it's kind of a continuous ongoing process, and we update periodically for various locations. So locations that change a lot are busier, like, I don't know, Manhattan, I guess, would change more frequently than say Pryor would. Lots of right, lots of stores opening and closing, lots of businesses moving around and stuff, lots of development. So we would do Street View and all that kind of stuff. We would do that more frequently in a place like Manhattan than a more rural area. Right, it doesn't change as much, but it's kind of a continuous updating process.
Sorry.
Anything else?
It's 1 o'clock.
Okay,
So
perfect.
we have a gift for you. Come here.
Oh, sure.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
This is for you, and this is for Zach. So
Awesome, thanks.
appreciate you both so much. Thank you for being a part of this. It was so interesting. It really was.
Thanks.